Welcome to this special episode of Norwich Theatre Talks. You will notice by the fact there isn't a very large plant over my right hand shoulder that we are not in podcast corner at the Playhouse. I am actually, as it happens, sitting here in a dressing room at Birmingham Hippodrome, having opened our solo show with Carlos Acosta here to massive standing ovations last night. And whilst we're out on the road talking dance, we're giving over this episode of Norwich Theatre Talks to two amazing dance artists whose latest collaboration will be welcoming to Norwich Theatre Royal in a few weeks' time as part of Norfolk and Norwich Festival. Without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to Norwich Theatre Talks Sidi Larbi and Marc Brew. Welcome, Marc and Larbi, to Norwich Theatre Talks. It is lovely to get the chance to talk to you because we're now just a couple of weeks away, aren't we, before an accident a life comes to Theatre Royal as part of Norfolk and Norwich Festival. And we are so excited to have the show with us. I was lucky enough to come out to Belgium to see its first ever sharing. It's going to be really exciting to see it on our stage. And it's an amazing story, Marc. Can we start with you, because it is very much your story, and for people listening, just remind them of the incredible journey you've been on.
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. So, as the title suggests, it's about an accident. So, I was involved in a car accident in 1997 while I was living and working in South Africa for Pact Ballet. So, I trained as a professional classical dancer and through the Australian Ballet School and the Australian Ballet Company. So, moving to South Africa and working with Pact Ballet was my first sort of real professional gig, working internationally. I was 20, I felt like the world was my oyster and I was invincible. But unfortunately, on one Saturday afternoon after class, myself and three friends jumped into a car and we're heading to a game reserve to go bushwalking. And in a matter of seconds, this drunk driver, I found out later, had driven down the off-ramp of the motorway and was on the wrong side of the motorway. And it just so happened that he hit our car head on. And in a matter of seconds, our lives had changed forever. And I was the only one that survived. My three friends were killed. And the drunk driver, I believe, survived with a broken knee or something. And then from there, my whole world was around dance and my body, and so it was like a movie, like a nightmare of a movie, where all of a sudden the doctor comes in the movie and says, "Hey, Marc Brew, you're never going to walk again. You're paralyzed from the neck down." And I was like, "No, that can't be happening to me. Marc, I'm a dancer." So that is sort of the beginning of the piece, just of the accident. But then it talks about the recovery. It also talks about what I remember and what I don't remember, as about journey of growth and healing, and memory, as we show and tell the story in different aspects as I continue my life as a dancer, as an artist, as a person.
What's prompted you to want to tell the story now, at this point in your career?
To be honest, Steve, I never thought I would tell this part of the story. Um, I didn't think it was interesting enough, or I had no idea how I'd even make it into something that could be compelling and that people would want to experience. But meeting Larbi, we met in 2021, and that was during the pandemic. So initially it was through Zoom, and all of our conversations were just talking about our lives and our lived experiences, and how they connected and related through different experiences that we both had, and we related. Uh, and we then started exploring movement and body and how I could move my body. And Larbi was really fascinated um, around my physicality and my paralysis, and how that encompasses new and interesting ways of moving, and also how he could push and challenge me to go out of my own comfort zone, of my own familiarity of movement, which was really exciting for me. And then my story in the accident started to become more prominent, and Labi then started doing a creative task of interviewing me. And he asked one day, do you mind telling me about that day and what happened after that? So that was sort of the beginning of this interview process, which then formed the basis of an accident alive.
That's a great segue. Larbi, welcome. It's lovely to have you here as well. And I'm kind of conscious that a lot of our regular dance audiences, people listening, will be familiar with your work. I think we've had Fawn on our stages quite a few times over recent years. It's become a real favourite. It's a very personal thing that you've come to tell Mark's story. Was that something of a departure for you to take on such a personal narrative piece?
I think yes and no, in a sense, like earlier in my career, very often I had a bit of a documentarist kind of approach. And I think through the period of COVID, when I met Mark, which was right in the middle of a bit of a, let's say, existential questioning kind of moment for a lot of people, we met in a very particular time where everything kind of was questioned again. And so when I started talking with Mark, first of all, I just met a kindred spirit. Like I met somebody who we felt very comfortable talking very openly, very quickly. Then, as an artist, I felt compelled to see that very often Mark gets asked certain personal questions that you're not always in the mood to answer. But because of the circumstances you're in, you people feel like they are entitled to get an answer about this or that or what happened there. And I felt like, well, if you sublimate this into an art form, if we actually get into this dialogue, it suddenly gives you the possibility to play with truth and fiction. In the fact of what Mark didn't remember, I thought was very intriguing because you have to be creative then to kind of fill it in anyway, to think, I think this happened, I think that happened. Mark's story is a very epic story, but it's also epic in its in the gaps of the memory lapses. I thought also that the emotional journey of Mark having had such a distance on the accident, I felt like Mark, you had the period of life and of figuring things out and being creative with certain aspects in order to look back with a lot of care to that younger Mark. And I felt that was something I could connect to very much as a older becoming body also. All these things are quite I don't always like to use the word, but universal, about feeling vulnerable or feeling judged or feeling abandoned or supported. Mark's story was also a vehicle of all these awarenesses, and I was just more like a documentarist, kind of like catching the moments and then reflecting them back to Mark. In a way, it's a duet also between Mark and a car. There's a car on stage, for those who haven't seen it. You feel the tension between Mark as a performer, as a body, and that car that is like a silent witness.
Lovely, that's absolutely fascinating. I wish I'd been in these Zooms. I mean, it's just incredible hearing about that process. 27 years have passed. Mark, what's that process been like for you, having to dig really deep emotionally back into that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I have always carried this, in these last 20 years, 7 years, that Joanne, Simon, and Toby, he didn't make it, and feeling that responsibility to have to live my life the most and best that I could. And in a way, unexpectedly, this has given me an opportunity to sort of share these memories, and what I went through, in the hope that it may give insight and help others. Not that this was done as a healing project at all, and it's not come from a therapy sort of perspective, but it has been quite healing, and it has also been has caught me unaware at times. I just get this wave every now and again, like, oh, this is real. I did go through this. There's no way I could have created this on my own. I mean, having Larbi's expertise in storytelling and the whole sort of dramaturgical picture and the staging of this production is just amazing. I've really loved working with another choreographer and being directed by Larbi to really be going to these new and interesting places that I've never been as a performer.
Absolutely, and dramaturgically and narratively, people might think this is a story of great sadness, but actually, it's a joyous experience. As we hear the story go on, you tell it with actually a level of distance that makes the audience feel comfortable being so close to your story? Was that something that evolved, or had you kind of taken a view on how you wanted your story told?
I think, when we started making this work and we started developing each of the scenes, Larbi really wanted me to be really close to the audience. And in a way, I thought like, oh, I could be safer from being further away and disconnected. But actually, the point is, he wants me to be connected with the audience, and I am connected. And the audience, when I first performed this, like, wow, they're with me the whole way. And the story goes up and down. There's humor, obviously there's emotional sadness too, but there's also hope and there's celebration. So it does really go on a journey and shares different parts of my personality, I feel.
Absolutely. I'm struck as well that in the kind of passing of time over this 27 years, the context that sits around physical disability and certainly ability and ableism has changed enormously. Mark, to what extent did you feel that you needed to represent, or was that not part of your thinking? You didn't want to take that on?
What people don't realize with this piece, obviously, we're not giving the sort of pre-story, so people don't know that I was, a trained dancer before the accident. They get to see this piece from boom, an accident, and then what happens after that. It took me a long time to identify as being disabled, because for the first 20 years of my life, I was never exposed to anybody with a disability. And just as sort of my own sexuality and being gay, that took time and a process. Same with, coming out and identifying as being disabled as well. So that definitely is in the work, but also how people's perceptions had changed and how people saw me differently. So I think we definitely came in with a disability lens and really wanting to share that experience as well that I went through.
Larbi, what would you respond to the question? Because I guess for a choreographer, a non-disabled choreographer, that's a learning space for you. And I was really interested about your intrigue with Mark's body and his physicality and the kind of storytelling he can do through that.
I loved, Mark, how you explained also how sometimes society kind of disables you by
Mm,
making certain things not accessible, or only having stairs or only having specific ways to get somewhere. And that was very confronting for me, realizing the constraints just because of the way we build our society. When it comes to choreography, it was almost the opposite. Mark is a dancer, and so there was a very organic way for us to work. And most dancers that I work with have other forms of disability, in a sense, like there's always things you know to do and things you don't know to do. So from a performer's perspective, Mark was my best dancer because
mhm,
he's a choreographer himself, and so his brain works very quickly at solving the issues I'm proposing. The physical body for me had specific limits, the way other bodies also have limits. At the end of the day, it's a one-on-one relationship with the performer, and so we are looking at how to convey certain feelings, and those feelings aren't disabled. They are basically the feelings we have. And then when it came to physically exploring, Mark's very open-minded, so he was really like, you were always giving me space. So it was
mm,
exciting for me to work with Mark as a performer. And the only big challenge, I guess, was Mark had already spoken on stage, but not that much, and I
mm,
really wanted to encourage to use the voice. So we also did a lot of work on speaking. And Mark was so eager and open and capable because he's an amazing talker, and that's something that I felt, I don't know, was exciting for me, like these layers of physical exploration and then also the verbal exploration. Yeah, I just had a blast, and I just feel very privileged, to be working with him.
This is a challenge, and it does rely as much on your body as your vocal storytelling, doesn't it? And how was that? And
mm.
where's that going to take you next in terms of your own practice?
Great question. Definitely, dance and speaking with my body, non-verbally, is my comfort zone. I mean, the piece is so multi-layered, from all the visual work that's been made into the piece, the staging, it's so conceptual and visual. Each scene has a different flavor and often has a different costume change. So each scene has to be delivered differently. It's not the same. And I'm coming from it in different places. The vocal work has been the most, well, it's all been challenging, but in a good way, but definitely has pushed me as an artist. And I just have to keep on going back to my breath and also remembering that memory, that moment, because what we want it to be is to be honest and real.
Larbi, you used the words earlier on, and that's epic. It is an epic
Mm.
story told in an epic way. I mean, just tell us a little bit about how you approach that, Larbi, because for people who and audiences who come to dance, they will see the movement. For audiences that enjoy drama, for those that really like almost an immersive experience, there's so many parts to it, aren't there?
Yeah, I guess it's also because when we were making it, we didn't know if we were going to make a dance piece or if we were going to make a movie, because we were in a time where we weren't sure it's going to be able to be put on stage. And so we were also working as in maybe this is going to be a short movie or a video approach. Once it was clear that no, we can put this on stage, all the work we had done previously kind of it was taken along. It kind of made itself, like the piece made itself, like step by step. And all I did was listen. I felt what is lovely, and I can't, underscore it enough, is that because Mark is a choreographer himself, he did not, nothing scared him, and I love that Mark was just game, like with that. It's just all the time. Sometimes there was production resistance if my ideas were too crazy for the production in general. Like, like, oh my God, it's really hard to put that car up there, and I'm like, make it happen. And I would really fight for some of the ideas with my teeth to because I knew that it would really serve the story. At the end of the day, there's these two elements to it: an accident, a life. A life that came quite late. We realized that we need that second title too, because it's not just about the accident; it's about
Mm,
life, and it's
mm,
about all the things we go through in life. And
mm,
I felt like we needed to feel the scariness, so it had to be a bit like a David Lynch moment to it, which is linked to the accident. But then alive is also the humor and the space of yeah, finding a way to get through things, to
mm,
anything, small things and big things. And so for me, all the things that are in the performance, Mark's appreciation and love for his mother, for instance, is so relevant and important. And there's a moment Mark speaks to his mom, and then there's this beautiful moment where his mom says, like, "Why didn't you ask
record this before.
record this before? Why didn't you?" And I thought, like, well, that's an amazing. Only a mother could ask that. It's just so relatable. I mean, it reminds me of my mom because as children, and especially as a 20-year-old, I'm sure Mark was incredible as a 20-year-old, but you're still quite self-centered. And
Mm.
so the idea of decentering and going into what was it for you, mom? And I thought that was so beautiful. I just love those moments. There's many moments I could watch the show every day just because it just triggers these emotional things that I think a lot of people can connect to.
That moment in the show really struck me, and it because actually the title of the show has evolved, hasn't it? I think when I saw it, it was an accident, and later it became an accident, a life, because what's in this is a sort of, what I took from it was a message that, to a degree, it's the events around us that shape our lives, but there's something more core to this, isn't there? And that moment where we hear from your mum, you say, actually, no, that's the thing that shapes us, those core values, that strength that we absorb from other things, even if events around us weaken us. How did your mum feel? This is a question I wanted to ask. How did your mum feel about ending up in the show?
She hasn't seen the show yet, but she gets reports from me. She likes the fact that she's in the show, and I let her know that people really like that moment. And she's like, "Don't worry, Mark, you'll be fine. They're going to be loving me anyway." So for her, she feels a bit of pride, like she's made it into the show with her humor because she's very humorous. Um, but my mother is my mother, and she's always been like that. She's very Australian. Will just wears her hearts on her sleeve and say as it is. And um, I think people really enjoy her frankness, and her honesty and her delivery. And I do look forward to the day that she gets to see the work in a whole. But as Labby said, she was a huge, big part of this. She helped me get through it all, and same with my family.
Thank you both so very much for sharing the incredible work and process, and it's glorious to kind of hear you guys talk together about it as well, and that comes across on the stage. And Mark, we can't wait to welcome you and the whole company to our city. Thank you both for talking to me today.
Thank you, Stephen. We're really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from those two incredible and iconic artists, and will join us for what is going to be an epic production in so very many ways. An Accident, a Life is with us at Norwich Theatre Royal from the 24th to the 25th of May as part of Norfolk and Norwich Festival. And if you haven't bought your tickets, please do so now at norwichtheatre.org. It really is one of the stories I'm most excited to tell on our stage.